Hi, my name is Samantha Conley, and I worked with Aubrey Adams for the Millersville Science Center Wayfinding Design project. Looking at our table of contents, we're going to be starting off with our primary wayfinding audit, which includes a description of what we found, talking about the physical condition and the existing wayfinding problems that come along with the Millersville Science Center. After that, we're going to dive into our signage designs that we created with our fonts and colors and icons, and then going into the directional signs, complex major identification signs, major and minor identification signs, orientation signs, map design, exterior sign, and the temporary sign template. And then we'll be showing you some of those in motion in our mock-ups. They're just going to show you how they would look in the building itself. And using those, we're using our exterior signs, orientation signs, directional/minor identification signs, and temporary signs.
What is the Science Center at Millersville? The Science Center is divided into two halls, with one hall being called Caputo and the other being called Roddy. Caputo came first when it debuted in 1999, and soon after, in 2001, Roddy came along. Caputo focuses on biology, chemistry, nursing, and the meteorology program, whereas Roddy focuses on botany and ecology, geology, computer science, and physics. Now let's talk about what sort of problems we saw as we were walking the hallways of the Science Center. The first thing we noticed when we walked through one of the entrances was that we had no idea whether or not we were in Caputo or Roddy since there were no signs telling us. There were also no signs directing us to room numbers. As we walked down the hallway, we noticed that the room numbers were in the 200s, so we assumed that we were on the second floor, but there were still no signs indicating that our assumption was correct. The more you walked in the building, the more lost you became because every hallway looked almost identical, but we did manage to find a sign that read the biology wing, so we knew that we were near the biology classrooms. The last thing we noticed while walking through the hallways was that there weren't many signs to help with the handicap. If someone were to be in a wheelchair, they would most likely not know where it is safe for them to go due to the lack of signage. Overall, the science complex could benefit with more signage to help students navigate the building.
When looking at the analysis of existing wayfinding problems, I found that the hierarchy of destinations is designed like most school buildings. The number of rooms increase and decrease down the hallway depending on which way you were going, and they are more often than not in numerical order. One unique problem that existed due to odd locations or building structure is the building itself. Roddy seems to be split with Caputo. During my research, I found that Caputo Hall and Roddy Hall are the same building, but they are split down the middle. This became very confusing when I entered the building that I thought was going to be Roddy, but was actually Caputo. Some unique problems of disabled visitors include entering the building right where you need to be. As shown in Figure 1 and 2, you can see the geology and nursing entrances that are only accessible by a big staircase, which is not friendly to disabled visitors. That might otherwise have to go through the front entrance and navigate throughout the building, instead of entering the building right where they need to be. And Figure 3 is just a picture of the hallway so that you can see that there is one main hallway that breaks into separate hallways through that main one. Looking at our fonts, colors, and icons that we chose for this project, we started with this green color that reminds us of science. That's why we chose that color. And then we chose a blue accent color. That way it's kind of earthy and sciencey. And then we just chose our black and white as our complementing colors for our text. And then we have our icons there, which are just thin-lined icons. We drew out the different science icons and stuff like that to show that. For our fonts, we chose Omnium Semi-Bold. This is a font that I found on Adobe Fonts, and I think that it really brings out the sciencey feel. It is a science font. And then we just chose Avenir Medium to complement that in the different signs. For our first sign, we did a directional sign. This is just going to be in the front of the building that shows you that this is Millersville Science Center, and then Caputo is that way and Roddy is that way, since we discussed that the Millersville Science Center is broken up into two different buildings. Technically, one is Caputo and one is Roddy.
For the complex major identification sign, we decided to make signs to help students figure out if they were in the Caputo Hall or the Roddy Hall. As mentioned before, when we entered the building, we had no idea if we were in Caputo or Roddy, so these signs will help students determine which hall they are in.
Here we have our major identification signs. These signs are the type of signs that are going to tell you what is where. So each one has a section. So we have our geology, biology, physics, and nursing sections of the buildings, which is where those separate classrooms are going to be. And then we have our elevator sign and our handicap accessible. These signs include our icons, which are going to complement our text very nicely.
Since there was a lack of signage that would help determine what floor you're on or which direction each classroom is at, we decided to make those signs for the minor identification signs. That way, whichever entrance a student takes, they will immediately know what floor they're on and which way their classroom is.
Here we have our orientation sign. This basically is just going to show you our drawing of the fourth floor, is the floor that we chose to do for this sign. So we drew out the floor plan, and then it's just going to show you which way rooms are going. If you're finding a specific room number, it's going to take you to the roof, an elevator, and restrooms, and then obviously show you where you are, where the sign is hung in the hallways. And then here we just have the map design, which is exactly what is on the orientation sign. It's just a closer look at that and showing you what that looks like.
Due to Caputo and Roddy having different focuses of majors, it would be beneficial to make a sign of what hall a student will be going into before they even enter the building. So for the exterior signs, we made welcome signs for both Caputo and Roddy, so that way the student can determine which hall they are about to walk into. We decided to make a special guest speaker sign and a sign that lets students know the restroom will be temporarily closed for our temporary sign template. The Science Center doesn't necessarily need a special guest speaker sign, but we thought it would be an interesting concept with all of the guest speakers that come to visit and give students lectures. The sign will have a slot where you can change the name of the guest speaker, so the school won't need a new sign every time there's a new speaker. As for the temporary restroom sign, we knew that everyone has seen a sign like that, so we wanted to add something a little different to it. We decided to add a guide to help students find the closest working bathroom. Here are a few mock-ups we've created to show where we would put some of our signs. As mentioned before, we want students to know what hall they will be going into before entering the building, so this sign will be on the wall outside for students to see. The orientation sign of the floor plan will be scattered on the walls throughout the hallways to help students determine where they are and how to get to their classroom. Similar to the floor plan, the room number signs will help students find their classrooms, so we put the sign coming down from the ceiling. That way it's easy for all students to see. For the signs that tell the students what wing they're in, we wanted to also put it towards the ceiling for the same reasons as the directional signs. The special guest speaker sign will go on the door of any classroom where there is a special guest giving a lecture to students. As for the temporary restroom sign, it will go on the door of any restroom that is not functioning properly and needs to be closed.
Thank you for listening to our presentation.